different format on here too. Happy Monday. I think seated looks pretty good. Let's do that. And let's make sure I have my audio set up appropriately. So coming into just a seat that feels supportive and really feeling into how we can bring more ease into physicality of the seat. Let's try to add 10% duration, energy, or awareness on the exhale portion of the breath, so that the exhale has a little bit more energy than the inhale. You could also view this as just really concentrating on forcing out or emptying the lungs as much as is possible. And we'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds to center and effort into as much breath release as is possible. Last 10 seconds here. And with that next full exhale, that full emptying of the lungs, let's drop our chin to our sternum and think about keeping the middle of the body really engaged so we stay neutral, but maybe moving the head and releasing that back cervical supportive musculature so that we can just be at ease, like the front of the throat completely relaxes and your head falls as far as it possibly can into the depth of that flexion of the cervical spine. And then rotate your chin towards your right shoulder. So just straight to the right shoulder. And then back into that tucked position. And then straight to the left shoulder. Almost like the top of the head is pointing towards the front of your room, front of your mat. And relax back to neutral, and we'll bring our head back to that neutral space. And now make sure that the cervical spine retracts enough so that we're not in that head hang position, but we really get the height here. And let's just experience the freedom of range. So we'll twist to the right. And as you get into the full twist capacity, squeeze into the glutes, squeeze into the core, and push your head towards the top of the ceiling and see if there's a little bit more rotation to find. And then relax back to neutral, and we'll do that to the second side. So head comes to the left. We get that glute core squeeze, that lift, and then that energetic entire head, entire torso lifting. And relax back to neutral. And let's transition to hands and knees tabletop. Splay those fingers out nice and wide. Let's sway the hips a little bit. Taking that torso space that you've created or granted from those rotations and really thinking about moving into that as you let the hips sway. And then we'll bring our hips back to neutral, curl our toes underneath us, lift our seat into down dog, and roll back into that, press back into that, energize back into that, shoot the strength across the finger mounds here, and really think about that sensation of depth. Let's walk our way to the front of the mat. Push the hands, so bend the knees maybe if need be, but push the hands into the mat in the same way where we were creating that energy in down dog. The knees can bend all the way to 90 degrees or further, but we want the hands connecting. And then let's just lift our head and think about extending to neutral through the neck. And then exhale back, and then we'll roll ourselves up. And feel how the low back musculature responds from all this upper back, real high cervical spine work we've done. As we unroll our way into mountain, bring our hands together, heart center. Let the fingers find their mirror on the opposite side and give a little bit of pressure at the fingertips. Squeeze the glutes just slightly and let the eyes close if that is comfortable for you. And think about balancing the weight in the body with a little bit of tension in the glutes and a little bit of pressure in the fingers. And let the eyes open, so you can relax the eyes open, and let the hands relax down to the hips so that the forefingers are on the front of the hips, the thumbs wrap around. And we'll slide our left foot straight back into lunge. Using the shoulders and the front of the hips as two just kind of metaphorical headlights pointing straight forward. Broaden out there, and then take your right hand and extend it straight forward, thumb up. And as that happens, push back through that left calf, left heel just a little bit more intently. And then we'll drop the right hand and slide that left foot forward. Back into this little mountain position. And when you're ready, hands just staying more or less relaxed on the hips as a guide. We'll slide the right foot straight back, side two. And we set the position, we develop the strength. We think about the hips and the shoulders pointing straight forward. Really think about two beams going straight out, and imagine or recreate that sensation of how parallel you can get them. And then left arm extends forward, thumb up. And as that happens, press and drive back into that right calf just a little bit more intently. And then left hand drops, right foot steps forward to the front of the mat. Sweep the arms up and overhead, turn the palms towards the front of the room, and exhale through forward fold. Using that hand positioning as a guide to elongate, relax the shoulders And with the shoulders fully relaxed, lift just your head into half lift. So the torso stays as is, gaze up, and then exhale back down. And think about, as the head drops back into this shape, how that shelf of musculature just below the scapula, so on the glute side of the scapula, can relax even more intently so the head can fall all the way into the depth of the shape. And then let's plant our hands and we'll walk ourselves back and into down dog. Come down to hands and knees. Flip the tops of the feet. And slide back and into child's pose. And breathe and ease and melt into your child's pose here. Just hip capsule compression, full body breath. Maybe focusing on that exhale with a little bit of extra emphasis or energy. And we'll give ourselves 15 more seconds here. And when you're ready, hands slide in front of us. If they're not there, we'll press ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, curl your toes, lift your seat, find your way back into down dog. Drive that energy from the finger mounds, from the fingerprints, and transition that energy through the spine and into the tailbone. And then we'll walk our way forward to fold. Inhale to half lift. Hold that half lift energy. Think about the length that you can create. Position your neck and your head so that you feel that length we've created already. And then exhale back into the fold. And as you come back into that fold, think about that softening of that musculature shelf underneath the scapula, releasing the head into depth. Then let's drift our awareness to our sacrum and let's slowly roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, making our way back into mountain, eventually finding that strength and that neutrality, bringing our hands together at heart center. Just a breath or two there as you feel the balance on the left and right side, and then release your hands back to your hips. And from the hips, let's slide our right foot straight back into our lunge, establishing the strength in the legs. This time, the right hand is going to come forward, thumb up. And as that right hand extends out, we want to feel the interior of the right hip receive that extra bit of length requirement. So really push your fingers forward and splay those fingers out wide. And then keep that energy in the arm and hand as you lower it down and plant for the left hand to reach up into the twist. And then ground your right heel and your left hand coming to the medial edge of the left foot, and let your right hand roll right open into the side angle. Right hand comes down, right heel lifts up. Slide your right foot forward and return to fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold as you settle back into that fold. Completely release, completely relax, and melt. Drift your awareness to your sacrum. Let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae. Eventually coming to the point where we find mountain and hands come together at heart center. Taking a breath or two just to balance yourself with that awareness of the hand placement. And then we'll drop our hands to our hips. They become a guide as we slide our left foot back, side two back. We'll do the same thing as side one. Left arm this time reaches forward, and we reach and extend that out, splaying the fingers so that we can start to capture and pull on this anterior side of the left hip. Really sometimes have to drive forward to find that. And then we're keeping that amount of energy as the left hand comes down and the right hand extends up into the twist. And then the left heel drops, right hand drops, right hand comes down on the big toe edge, medial edge, left hand reaches up for side angle, side two. So we capture this side body space. And then as you feel appropriate, left hand comes down, left heel spins up, left foot steps forward, inhale to half lift, exhale back to fold, plant your hands, walk yourself back into plank. Before you come out of plank, lock in the strength of the middle of the body, and then slowly lower yourself down to the mat. We'll keep our hands right underneath our shoulders here. Flex your quads so that your kneecaps lift. Pull your elbows into your rib cage almost, so you feel pressure from the elbows. And then take the top of the head, and as you lift it, as you peel it away from the mat, with those elbows squeezing in and with the glutes and the quads engaged, the head just wants to extend forward. Only lift your head off the mat enough so that your head starts to extend forward, and get that length. Feel the upper back musculature's involvement in that length of your cervical spine, that neck space. And then relax. Slide your hands underneath your forehead for a little crocodile pose. And just settle into a fluid breath. If you want to have that extra energy on the exhale, feel free, but don't feel like you need to. And so there's this cobbler who lives in this little village in the mountains. This incredibly picturesque village, surrounded by forests and streams, and visited by migrating birds and wildlife. And this cobbler is a true craftsman. He's been making the exact same style of shoes for several decades now. And he's perfected the craft of making this shoe. We'll give ourselves 20 more seconds here. And so he spends his mornings in his tiny little shop. Really, the only sounds are the tapping of his hammer and the birds outside, and the occasional conversation with a customer. When you're ready, let's slide our hands back underneath our shoulders, and we'll press ourselves up to hands on knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, let's curl our toes, lift our seat, and find our way back into down dog. Really drive back into that down dog. Same thing. Think about transitioning the energy that your hands are creating with the contact to the mat all the way back into the elevation and the lift of your hips. And then let's walk our way forward once again to the front of the mat. And inhale into half lift. And exhale into fold. Slide your left foot straight back into lunge. Capture some depth, but wiggle that left foot back maybe just another space. And then slide back towards your right hamstring. So as much straightening of that right hamstring as feels appropriate. And then bend your right knee and sweep your arms up towards crescent. And then ground your left heel and open yourself up into warrior two. And as you open up into that warrior two, think about this medial line space, right? If you were in practice yesterday, we kind of found our way just to the edge of that medial line. Think about relaxing in, opening up into that, using all of this lateral space and this upper torso space. And then spin your left heel up. We'll come back into crescent, float the hands down to the mat, and then slide the right leg back towards that pyramid shape one more time. So just getting as much depth into that right hamstring as feels comfortable. That does not mean that your right hamstring needs to be straight. It just means we're looking for a little space. And then we'll bend the right knee and slide our way forward to fold. Now we have some asymmetry in the fold. Before you take your half lift, so in the depth of the fold, think about how you can balance. Think about what you can do, most preferably by relaxing, but maybe by engaging musculature to find your way back to balance. And then let's inhale into half lift. And as you come to this half lift, maybe use the front of your legs to help pressurize and extend out. Get that back musculature nice and neutral before you relax back. And then slide your right foot straight back into lunge. Capture that depth and then wiggle back just one more tick. And then we'll slide back into the left hamstring. So we start to straighten in to that front leg. And then we'll bend the left knee, sweep ourselves up, establish your neutral torso, your strengthened crescent, then the right heel grounds, and we open to warrior two. And as we open into warrior two, we're thinking about peeling and blossoming open that medial line so that the middle of the body is just really finding its way into this expansiveness possibility. And think about how we can utilize that little extra bit of depth that we tweaked in to make this possible. And then right heel spins up, both hands reach up, crescent, hands come down to the mat, and we slide back into the left hamstring. The trick here, the second time we get in, we're very deep because the rotation on that back leg ends up creating just a little bit more space. Plus we cheated just a little more space So we're very deep the second time. Eventually the left knee bends and we slide our way forward. Inhale into half lift. Maybe sliding the hands up again so that we can create that really strong neutral back. And then exhale into fold. Nice skip. Heck yeah. Find that depth. Eventually, we'll transition our awareness to our sacrum, and we'll decide if we want to roll or sweep our way up. Into mountain. Hands come together at heart center. With some pretty likely fatigue in that hamstring space on both sides, I want you to think about splaying the toes out and getting the toe mounds like they're actively gripping, and thinking about that active grip and how it helps compensate for the fatigue in the hamstrings as you sink back towards chair. Again, we want those knees to be right over our ankles. And we want to think about toes being actively involved in the shape, keeping our middle body neutral. And then we'll rise back up. Actively splay the toes out once again. And we're going to try to find even more depth in our chair without allowing our torso to shift. So our torso is going to stay vertical. And we're just going to push back, push back, push back, and think about keeping the torso upright without compromising. I'm always forward because I don't want you to arch. What I want you to think about is core lock in, torso as vertical as possible, flat back, good depth into the tailbone, good activation in the toes. So we can feel the rib cage and the top of the ilium kind of pulling the soft tissue of the lumbar into length. And then let's rise back up. Oof. Sweep the arms up and overhead. Turn your palms towards the front of the room once again. Use the arm energy. So hands reaching out as you come through fold. And feel the length in your low back musculature as you transition into the bottom of this fold. And just settle into that length. And then let's inhale to half lift. Exhale back into fold. Relax that shoulder girdle or that musculature shelf underneath the shoulder girdle so the head lets go. Plant your hands and walk to plank. Feel the strength in the middle of the body in plank, and then lower yourself to your belly, nice and gently. Yeah, nice, Lisa. Hands come or stay right where they are underneath the shoulders. Quads flex, kneecaps lift, glutes engage to protect the low back. Actively feel the fingers engage into the mat in a similar way that we had the toes engaging in the mat in that last chair. Lift your head just enough so that you feel the desire for length as the head extends out towards the front of your mat. And just hold that awareness kind of in the forefront of your mind and let your respiratory cycle be that second layer of thought. And we're going to be here for 15 more seconds, concentrating on length and breathing, really thinking about length first, breathing second, obviously with breathing being the most important thing. And relax. Slide your hands underneath your forehead, little crocodile pose. Little fluid, easy breath. A lot of relaxation of the musculature. Really think about letting the musculature deactivate here. And so one day this merchant comes in, this merchant's traveling through the town from the big city, not that far away. And he comes into the cobbler's shop and he buys this pair of shoes and he puts them on, and they're just like perfect representations of this merchant's foot. And he's just looking down at the shoe and admiring the quality and the craftsmanship of this cobbler. And he turns to the cobbler and he says, I have a business proposal for you. I want to get you out of this little town. I want to get you out of this little shop. I want to take your talents to the big city. Everyone in the city has money and wants quality craftsmanship like this. And with your skills, we get you there and you're going to make more money than you can imagine. You're going to have everything you've ever wanted. And of course, this catches the cobbler's attention. Last 15 seconds here. And so the two continue this dialogue, and the merchant just keeps ensuring and promising that if you make this move, if you become business partners with me, you're going to have everything you've ever wanted. When you're ready, let's slide our hands back underneath our shoulders. We'll press ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, let's slide our left foot straight back so that the left toe mound can connect with the mat. And then ground your left heel and keep your right toe mound connected with the mat. So right toe mound is still actively underneath you. And we're just going to push with the right hand up into a little grounded warrior two. Thinking about this lateral edge line in the left leg kind of as a more or less primary focus, keeping the torso as vertical as you can get it, and then feeling that medial line expansion on that left leg as well. So thinking about the energy on the outer edge, feeling the expansion on the inner edge. And then let's ground back to this space. Bend your, let's roll back into this down dog version, this modified down dog version where the right leg is just kind of hanging here. And then step your right foot forward into lunge. And then we are going to ground the left heel and take ourselves up into a traditional warrior two. From traditional warrior two, slide back into that right hamstring. And then we're going to start to T pedal forward towards triangle. Surprising amount of room we've created. We got that sneaky hamstring expansion. We have these lateral and medial lines pretty open. Think about pushing your head out, that thing we've been working on so much, to create additional lateral length. And then let's bend the front knee for side angle. Lift ourselves back up into two. Spin the left heel up, find crescent. And then float the hands down to the mat. Step the right foot back into down dog. Come down to hands and knees tabletop. Flip the tops of the feet. And slide back into child's pose. Some asymmetry within the body for sure, but also a lot of room in the body. Right? Even post-holiday recovery, excess carb consumption, all of those things factored in, we're still creating a lot of room in the body. As you settle back into that, think about breathing and releasing into that space you've created. And let's give ourselves 10 more seconds here. And when you're ready, we're going to pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. We'll slide the second foot, the right foot, straight back into lunge. You want that left toe mound tucked underneath. Ground your right heel with the left hand. Press yourself up into this modified grounded warrior two. Think about the energy on the lateral edge of the right leg. That's kind of how we set the stability and the balance of the shape. And then we'll come back down, right heel lifts up, roll back into that modified version of down dog, where the left foot is just kind of hanging this time. And then we'll slide the left foot forward and into lunge. Right heel grounds, right hand takes us to two. And we feel in to this big space. Then slide back into the left hamstring. Start to tea kettle forward for triangle side two. Think about finding some ease within this shape. Drive the top of the head out to create more lateral length. And then we'll use the right oblique, or we'll bend the left knee, use the right oblique to draw us up to two. Right heel spins up to crescent. Hands drop to the mat. Left foot steps back into down dog. Drive all the way into that depth, then come down to hands and knees tabletop. Flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose and absorb that space. Now, all of that space, all of that bilateral room you've created. And we'll give ourselves just 30 seconds here to take this in. And eventually we'll pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. And we'll extend our legs straight out in front of us, little staff. Let's follow the leg extension into a fold. Fold of your choice, flexion of your choice. Just feeling kind of the natural flow of your body at this point in practice. Last 10 seconds here. When you're ready, we'll walk the spine back to vertical. Let's bend our left knee, so left foot plants. Pull that nice and close. And then we're going to take the left hand behind us, right hand to the left thigh, and drive the head up as we twist. So kind of a continual elevating or elongating of the spine from the head tonight, really from the first onset. And then we'll relax back to neutral. Let the left knee fall out wide and fold straight down the middle of your shape as if both legs were extended. So hands kind of roughly in the middle of where the legs would be if both legs were in front of you. And we'll walk ourselves back up into seat. Left knee comes up, and we'll extend the left leg to mirror the right. And just a brief little forward fold, just checking in on balance and then walking ourselves back to vertical. Right knee bends, right heel gets tucked up as close as is comfortable. Right hand behind us, left tricep elbow to the right thigh. Take your twist and extend the top of the head so that it is not just a spinal rotation, but a spinal elongation with the twist. And then we'll come back to neutral. Let the right knee fall out wide. Same middle fold here, like you are taking your hands right down the middle of the shape as if both legs are extended. Tried to make that so you could see and didn't. Yeah. And then when you feel balanced left to right, we'll walk ourselves back up, extend our right leg, and one last time, follow that forward into a seated forward fold. A lot of folds in a row here, long extended fold sequence. When you're ready, walk yourself back to a vertical spine and then release yourself onto your back to truly get the appreciation for all the folding we've done. And we just settle into that space. And so after some long thought and careful consideration, the cobbler decides he's going to take this merchant up on his deal. And they start a business partnership. The merchant's going to get a cut of the sales. The merchant buys the cobbler a new shop in the big city, right on Fashion Row. And sure enough, they open the shop, and instantaneously, his shoes are a smashing success. Everyone in the city wants a pair of this cobbler's shoes. And soon enough, everyone in the city has a pair of this cobbler's shoes. When you're ready, let's inhale and bring our knees into a bent position so that the kneecaps can point towards the ceiling if they're not already. And then we'll start to sway the knees side to side. So some dynamic exploration of the spine and hip integration here. And so because it is the big city, because it is the fashion forward city, because it is the wealthy city, Once everyone has the shoes, the trendsetters want something new. And so the merchant goes to the cobbler and he says, you got to create new designs. And he lays out two designs to add to the next collection. The cobbler, is just as the merchant promised, making more money than he can imagine. Next time the knees fall over to the left, let's let them settle there. And then he buys this big house and he can go out to all the fancy restaurants in the big city. And so he listens to the merchant. He adds the two new styles to his collection. And with the newness, there are some craftsmanship challenges. And the cobbler's an old pro. He's been making shoes for decades, but he has been making this one very specific style. And so he has some challenges. There are some buckles that tend to pop off, and a fastening strap that has a tendency to break. It's the first time in his career that he's ever had anyone, bring back a pair of shoes because they were dissatisfied. And yet, the money keeps flowing in. And the opportunities keep presenting themselves. And he buys a bigger house. And it feels appropriate. Let's inhale our knees back to neutral. And then we'll exhale and let the knees fall over to the second side. And the big city decides that next year they are going to do this huge fashion week. And the merchant comes to the cobbler and he has this catalog of new styles he wants him to create for Fashion Week. And he's done the math on each style and the release dates and the special promotions they'll do around each new design over the course of this week. And he's come up with this total financial return. And it has way too many zeros at the end of it. And then he's presenting it to the cobbler. And when he's done, cobbler's just looking at all of these new designs. And he looks up at the merchant and he looks at this packet and he's flipping through page after page after page after page of new shoe design. And he looks up at the merchant and he looks down at the packet. And he looks up at the merchant and he says, you know what? I think I want to go home. When you're ready, let's bring our knees back to neutral so the kneecaps can point towards the ceiling space. And just ask yourself if there's anything your body wants, needs, desires, or would benefit from before Shavasana. And if there is, let's offer that. And if you're ready for some stillness, let's find our way into that. And so the merchant kind of laughs and he says, "Oh, you want to think about which design you want to do first?" Cobbler says, "No, I think I want to go back to my village." And he packs up a very small bag and he walks out the door. And when you're right, when you feel receptive to it, just find some stillness for Shavasana. And so the cobbler heads back to his original little dingy shop in his little tiny village. And he gets back to work making that original design that he had become so well known for. And it's the only shoe he ever makes for the rest of his cobbling life. And every once in a while, one of the local villagers will come in and ask him why he decided to leave the big city, why he decided to leave all that fame and wealth that he had accumulated there. And his answer is always the same. Novelty is the antithesis of depth. And we'll start to bring some movement into our fingers and our toes. Into our wrists and our ankles. Up into our elbows and our knees. Your shoulders and your hips. To your neck and your head. Eventually, the entirety of the body will move, and we'll utilize that movement to transition from the shapes we are in back into a seat. In our seat, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid. Eyes close. And we'll inhale our hands together at heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself of that cobbler's lesson? Novelty being the antithesis of depth. And see how deeply you can sink into your layers of awareness. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Monday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. Have a beautiful week. I'll be back on Sunday to recharge, and I hope I see you very soon. Love the heck out of you. Mwah.